Now that I'm grown up, I can protect my inner children better. I can be a parent to them. That allows me to show a more authentic piece of me and still keep me protected.
Content warnings for this episode include dysphoria, mental health, domestic violence, and substance abuse.
Genderful would like to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples and unceded lands that the producers, hosts, and guests have lived and dwelt upon. Today we honor
Post Salish.
the Mohawk, Algonquin, and Anishinabewaki peoples.
And the Nisqually and Coast Salish peoples.
We honor the elders, the human, plant, and animal ancestors of these lands, and celebrate the living descendants of these peoples. May all beings tend these lands for the goodness of the next 7 generations and beyond.
Howdy, folks. Welcome to Genderful, a talk show interviewing gender diverse people about their special interests. Hi, I'm GenderMeowster, and my pronouns are they, them.
Hi, I'm Miranda Katita, and my pronouns are she, her.
The focus of our show is to interview trans, non-binary, agender, two-spirit, and gender diverse people regarding their special interests, passion projects, and resources for the gender diverse community.
We want our audience to know that we hold multiple diverse identities and bring these lenses to the show with our passion for telling our stories.
I identify as non-binary, transmasculine, polyamorous, ADHD, autistic, and disabled with chronic pain and mobility issues. I also am white and reside in the United States.
I identify as trans feminine, neurodivergent, queer, and a person of color residing in Canada. We invite you to remember that we are whole people with robust lives, friendships, challenges, and successes. We love and are loved, and we are delighted to share these stories with you.
As always, we kindly remind our listeners that no person is a monolith of their identities. Your identities can change over time and are valid every step of the way. And if you think you're gender diverse, you are gender diverse. There's no social or medical prerequisite to be included in the community. Welcome, everyone, to Genderful episode 100. Holy heck, episode 100.
We made it.
We made it. This week, our guest is TransCapybara, she, her, and she's chatting with us today about trans authenticity. TransCapybara, or just Cappy, is my wonderful wife for a long time. We've said when the show gets to episode 100, we'd have her on as a guest all by herself, and we finally made it. Can you believe it?
Wow.
We did it.
100.
Yes, we did.
I think we planned this like 50 episodes ago that you'd be our 100th guest.
Yeah. And I mean, I had the distinct honor of being guest number 99, which
Nice.
I don't think we planned that. I just worked out that way because, I mean, I scheduled myself in before you asked me to be a host. So I definitely have the distinct honor of being the lead into this episode.
It's so great. It's like, it's late August right now when we're recording this live. And I think we're booked through the end of October right now.
Wow, yeah.
We've got 2.5 to 3 months booked out on the show, which is amazing. Thank you,
Mhm.
Juice. Shout out to Juice for doing all that hard work. It's awesome.
Yeah.
There's a lot of love for you in chat right now, Cappy.
Yeah, I see
Many
that.
people are praising your name and spamming the Cappy command and making the emotes happen. It's very cute.
Also, Juice, go rest. You have the Rona. Just go rest. Get out of here. Don't make me ban you.
Juice is incredible. We all agree. It's so true. Yes. Cappy doesn't currently have chat pulled up. So if you want me to relay a message to her, please use the highlight message feature so that I notice. That's all I'll say about that to the live stream. Awesome. Well, welcome to Genderful, Cappy.
It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
In my head, I just imagined you making a long-time listener, first-time caller joke.
Long time? I don't want to do that joke.
Oh.
Okay. Nope.
Alice Napalm says hi and highlighted her message to tell you that.
Okay. Hi, Alice Napalm.
All right. I'm going to let Miranda ask the first question because otherwise I'll get too excited and ask all the questions.
Okay, fair enough. So, Cappy, what might be some of the things you can trace back to your youth and indicating you might be gender diverse one day?
To my youth, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, let's see. Well, little background on me. I grew up on a cattle ranch in the Pacific Northwest in the middle of the desert. And it was one of those things where, like, when I was a kid, I didn't really have an understanding of gender or anything like that. Like, I'm one of those people that didn't have a let's see, a very good understanding of like insight into myself, I guess. I was mostly just trying to make sure that I followed the rules and did a good job and did well in school. So like I really the first gendery thing that probably I ran into was whenever I was in college. Actually, it was probably 18, 19 years old. It was, all the way through, most of the way through my first wrong puberty at that point.
Mhm.
Uh, I had a let's see, it was kind of an unconscious desire to shave all of my body hair off. And I didn't know why I wanted to do that, but I wanted to. And it was like felt good to me. Like I would do that and then I would, come up with different techniques of however I got that done. But ever at the end of the day, like I'm like, all right, this is awesome. Like, um, and then just like not very far after that, the body hair grows back. It gets super itchy, and I'm just like, yeah, shaving the body hair off, it's fun, but the aftermath is not to be. Uh, it's not enjoyable.
Oh,
I
yeah.
have to keep doing this. It's like I got to figure out a more sustainable way of doing this. Like, and then it just kind of went to shaving like my pubic hair off,
Mm.
and I kept it like that, and everything else was kept the same. Just had to live with it. Long arm hair, and just like, look at my arm hair. Like, yeah, I don't like that, but okay.
Mhm.
And leg hair too. Just this didn't feel right. Still really doesn't actually.
Yeah.
So, uh, hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's very relatable to me. I mean, my relationship with my own body hair definitely played into my own kind of trans journey. I know personally, I experienced a lot of shame and cultural pressure to not shave it. So I don't know if you had like a similar experience with that, but I know like when I was first starting to experiment with my gender, I thought that people would immediately notice that I was starting to shave my arm hair because I used to have like hairy gorilla arms. And
Right.
um, when I did, no one noticed. And it's funny because we hyper focus on that sort of thing as as trans people, but cisgender people really don't notice or care about such things. And in fact, I had to point it out to some people, after I'd already come out. So I don't know if you had experienced any sorts of those feelings of either shame or societal pressure to kind of play the role that you were assigned.
Oh, societal pressure. Well, like I came to this realization of shaving my body hair off at a time where I was sharing communal showers with other men,
Mm,
because I lived in a dorm. I was going to college, and it was one of those situations where I had a roommate. Uh, we weren't really that naked around each other, and I really didn't want to be naked around my roommate. And it was,
mm,
a male roommate. Uh, and then the bathroom was one of those bathrooms where it's like you don't really have much privacy in the shower. Uh, I tried to create as much privacy as I could in the shower. Um, and it wasn't as bad at college as it was in high school. Like that was just a no way would I ever think to try to explore anything there. It wasn't
mhm,
even an option really in my mind. And and growing up the way I did with with the parents and the lifestyle and such, exploring any kind of femininity itself
Mhm.
was highly ridiculed.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah. No, that's we're of a similar generation, so
yeah,
yeah, I definitely know what you're talking about. Unfortunately, having grown up in an environment of toxic masculinity where anything feminine is mocked or looked down upon, or outwardly uh antagonized. So yeah, no, it's tough. And that's not the best environment, to explore your gender. So yeah.
So clearly,
yeah,
Cappy, something's happened between being that kiddo and being that even college student shaving body hair. Between then and now, which you're pretty
yeah,
far along in your trans journey. Um, how
yeah.
has your relationship to gender evolved over time? Like you can talk about any medical transition stuff you feel like talking about, but like just in general, like, you know, what was your path to being the level of self-actualized that you are today for those who are still trying to find their way to authenticity?
Right. All right. Uh, I really did start out as being so introspective, I suppose. I mean, back when I was 18, I certainly wasn't that introspective. Um, not as much as I am now. Uh, but the one thing that I was introspective on was how I was different from everyone that I knew. And that started pretty early on in school. And the earliest that I can remember that happening was kindergarten, actually, where uh, we were kind of in a group and we were told to read out of a book, and everyone just like took their turns reading out of a book. And like I read my thing out of a book, and I didn't think anything of it. And the next thing I know, I was told to go to the principal's office. And I'm like, why am I going to the principal's office? I didn't do anything wrong, did I? Um, and so I go to the principal's office and I'm thinking I'm in trouble for something. And it turns out I was there for because he wanted to give me a certificate for like you're being an awesome reader. And I'm like, okay, it's interesting. Like I did so well that a principal's giving me a certificate for reading. It was weird to me. Uh and then after I got that, I was like looking at everyone else, like, aren't everyone else why isn't everyone else getting a certificate? Did everyone else get a certificate? Why am I getting a certificate? So weird. And then that just kind of like I am of the personality and the curiosity nature of me that if I've got an unanswered question, it digs at me. It just gnaws for years and never goes away. Like if there's an unanswered question, my brain will just sit there and churn on it. Um, and that like never stopped. It just kept going. Through school. Why am I in a special reading group? Why am I made to read with people a grade higher than me reading books? Am I reading so well that they had to like challenge me to like, yeah, exactly. They did have to challenge me. I was
Mm.
reading above everyone else's grade level. So they were like, go read with the fifth graders over here. I'm like, okay. I was like third grade reading with fifth graders. Like, what is going on? Um, and it just kept going. It just like, why am I different? What's different about me? And just like so the gender thing wasn't figured out until later. But the whole like difference between me and someone else perpetuated itself like for years and years and years, and it just a snowball, like a the Katamari Damacy of like different like nuggets that just kept accumulating. And
So you're married to a gamer. You make casual video
Yes.
games.
Oh my God. I absolutely adore Katamari Damacy. And this is going to make me sound like a serial killer, but my favorite part of that game is when your ball gets big enough where you can start picking up people. And I get so much joy from hearing their screams.
I like when you can roll up buildings, but the game always ends right around then. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I want to roll up all the buildings. I want to get every single one.
But I did want to circle back to something because I mean you were identified as a gifted child. I mean you didn't say those words, but that's
well,
when
I
you're
mean,
bumped up to a reading level, that's essentially what you are. You're quote unquote a gifted child, and that's something I have some personal experience with. So I very much relate to how that can make you feel very different and how it can isolate you as well. Because, yeah, you might be a third grader reading with the fifth graders, but you're still a third grader. And at that age, that 2-year difference is huge. So, do you think that's kind of how do you think that affected your early gender journey?
I don't know. Uh, I don't know how it. At that point, I don't know how it would relate to my gender journey.
Mhm.
But it did relate to my authenticity journey,
Mm.
right? Which is, I define authenticity as knowing oneself enough to and having the courage to show it to everyone else, kind of sort of. And there's different aspects to that. There's a lot of different aspects to what you choose to show to people, what you feel like you need to just not hide.
Mm.
It's really what it comes down to.
Mhm.
um so it's like, this kind of continued on. And if we go to like that college age person where I'm shaving my body hair off and all of that, right? At that point, um, I had graduated high school with, in the top 10% of my class. I belonged to like the honor society. So I graduated with honors from high school. Um, and I was in college for a computer science degree. And I was also in the Air Force ROTC. So like, my point up until then, uh, I had grown up on a cattle ranch that sort of like shaped me in a way, like essentially eliminating fear. I was trained out of it. So I don't really fear things.
Mm.
Um, I don't really feel it in my body that I'm fearful.
Mm.
Uh, you know, but whenever it does happen, I'm like, wow, that's a weird feeling, fear. It's just like, whoa, that's gross. And then I try to like, I remember this fear. I remember what this feeling is, but I felt it like years and years ago as a child.
Mhm.
And the way that, and then my family would see that I was fearful about something and then be like, well, you got to just go do it now. You just got to go like get back up on that horse that bucked you off and ride it around. Or, just you fall off the haystack, you're climbing right up that haystack again. And you're just facing fear in the moment, like right then. Just like if you're fearful, then do it. You're going to get over this, because if you're fearful on a ranch, you're going to die.
Mhm.
You're going to make some bad decision where you can't think in the moment, and then you're going to get stomped or something like, or gored,
Mm.
or some
Yeah.
other horrible fate.
Yeah.
So,
And I feel like animals react to you differently when you're afraid or anxious or
yeah, they
yeah,
can totally tell. Yep.
yeah.
So like I'm in college, and then I like I go through college and transfer to another college and eventually graduate computer science, and all the while never having that question answered of why am I different from everyone else. Eventually, like, I get jobs. I bounce from startup to startup. I end up in some, an apartment at one point with a borrowed washer and dryer that they lent to me. And I open the dryer and here's this skirt in there, like someone else's skirt. And I'm like, that's weird. They delivered a dryer with someone's clothes in it. So I washed it again and dried it again and made sure it was clean. And then I like, huh, I don't know whose skirt this is, but maybe I should put it on. And then I did. And it was amazing. And I didn't know what that feeling was about. I'm like, what's going on in my body right now?
How old were you?
Yeah.
I was like, how old was I? What year was that?
You're like 21, 22, somewhere in there.
It was like when 2000, 2000? 25? 25. Yeah, 25 years old. First time wearing female clothes.
Yeah.
And not knowing what that feeling was. I'm like, this is strange. I feel oddly great. Like before I did that, I locked all the doors.
Of course.
I closed all the window blinds. I was the only person that living in my apartment. No one else had a key except for like my landlord. But I'm like bolting the door and shutting it and just making a container and put my
Is that your
skirt on.
first time living alone? It's like your family of
really.
origin. There is a bunch of
No.
people in your house.
Oh yeah, like I mean, in college there was times where I was, single in a dorm room. I could have done that then, but never really occurred to me.
Yeah.
It was sort of just
You didn't have
happenstance.
conveniently abandoned a skirt in those days.
Yeah, no, I've had a very similar experience actually, where I found in our apartment's laundry room, I found an article of women's clothing, and I just kind of grabbed it because it was abandoned, and I tried it on, and I had a very similar,
Cool.
reaction. So, yeah, that's. I talk about this on the show all the time about just the power of clothing and just wearing clothing that aligns more with your gender identity, even if you don't know what your gender identity is. So I'm sure at that time you were not identifying, as a woman. And definitely various points in my life where I've tried women's clothes while identifying as a man and feeling all these emotions and not having the language to describe what it was. But I knew that it made me feel good. So yeah, that is, I'm sure a lot of trans people have had similar experiences or would have gone through similar experiences in those similar situations. So I did want to so that we're going to do a little bit of a hard segue here into kind of a less serious topic. But do you have a favorite piece of media by trans creators?
Favorite piece of media by trans creators? Oh, like I'm a big fan of the Wachowski sisters. Big fan of Wachowski.
I mean, I was going to say The Matrix, but I didn't want to bury the lead on that one. So I didn't want to it's like, I didn't want to answer that question for you, but it's literally here in our show notes. It's like Matrix, probably.
I wrote it. I wrote that. I just wanted to give Cappy a chance to fangirl about The Matrix for a minute, basically.
Yes.
I mean, well, the interesting part about that was, like, the Wachowski sisters made the movie Bound before they made The Matrix. And I had watched Bound in 1999, 2000, 2001, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
And thought it was great. Like, it's like, wow, this is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't identify as a lesbian at that point. I was still very much a white cis man at that
Mm-hmm.
point. But I was like, wow, this is like damn good movie. Um, then there was like The Matrix came out in 99. I went to the theater 5
Mm-hmm.
times and watched The Matrix in the theater. I It's probably the only movie I've ever seen in a theater more than once, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it really struck a chord with me.
Yeah.
And that was before either of those sisters came out.
Yeah.
But I think they sort of, you know, had something going on that they had a story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they didn't know it. Maybe they did. I'm not sure. But it certainly struck a chord with me.
Mm-hmm.
Then later on, Lana Wachowski made Sense8, the TV show. And I really like that show too. Especially that they cast a trans woman as part of, the characters. And then I got to see like someone like me in a actual real show, like acting with everyone else. And like it was really normalizing and great to see. And uh so I keep my eyes open for where trans folks have been incorporated in media. And I'm pleased to see that it's happening more and more.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not just a token
Yeah.
anymore. We used to be. We used to
Yeah.
be like very one dimensional, let's make fun of this person over here sort of things. But,
Yeah.
it's great.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah.
oh boy, I could talk about that for hours, but
Yeah.
yeah,
So could I. Yeah.
trans representation in media, up until recently has been, yeah, it's either the trans person is played for laughs or they are the villain. So, I mean, there's two movies that, yeah, I mean, these are very good movies and I really like them, but the movies Psycho and Silence of the Lambs both have a antagonist, a murderer that can be seen, can be read as trans. So I mean, you can make arguments that, oh well, they're not really trans, but I mean, they're coded as trans. So like,
Yeah.
and that portrayal, it's really hard to see this, and it's what makes it really difficult for me is that they're really good movies, and I can't just like trash them. But like, it's just as a trans person, it's hard when those are the only portrayals of trans people that we had up until the last, I would say, decade or so. But yeah, and Tolstoy L12 in chats is the butt of a joke. So there's one movie that I have no fondness for. In fact, quite the opposite. Is the first Ace Ventura movie, where again the
Yeah.
antagonist of that movie is trans, and it's
Yep.
the butt of a joke, and it's
Yep.
a very tasteless one. And it's one that, in 2023, watching that movie is extremely cringy. And
Yeah.
I can't watch it. Like, I just
Yeah.
can't.
It does not hold up. Does
No,
not.
I would argue it never did. I mean, even like, because I
Yeah.
remember watching the movie when it came out and I felt very strange with it. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
but I'm so glad that we have better trans representation these days. So you mentioned The Matrix. I mean, The Matrix is an intrinsically trans film. In fact, one of my friend of a friend has a very good video on YouTube about that. You should absolutely go look that up. Um, and but a lot of it is subtext, whereas now we have explicitly trans characters mixed in with the subtextual characters. So that is wonderful to see. And I think that is really going to help a lot of the newer generation kind of come to terms with they don't have to walk the same difficult road that we had to walk with our transitions. So, but yeah, I think we are coming up on our ad break here. Is that right?
We are. So we have many questions still, folks. So stay tuned for after the Be Right Back. We're going to be talking about being trans in the workplace, being trans while parenting, and we're going to hear the mythical boat story that is
Yes.
Cappy's favorite story to tell at parties. It's a
We'll
very
call it
good and very
legend.
long story.
Yes.
We might have to take a third break before the boat story, to be honest, but it's going to be worth it. You should stick around for the boat story.
I've heard the short version of the boat story, and yes, it's wild. It's wild. Definitely stick around for that.
It's so wild. So good. So we're gonna float towards what it's like transitioning at work. Because that's an adventure. Cappy,
Okay.
what was it like for you coming out as trans in the workplace?
Well, yeah, like that's a whole thing. Tell you what. I've considered myself like, oh, I've got it just before we get into that. Please meet Shai Halub.
The great maker.
That's the name of your plant.
It's the name of my plant.
I haven't named mine yet, but this was my birthday present from you.
I feel left out. I feel left out. I don't have any plants.
We almost, in my mind, we almost came back each holding a cat.
Oh, I also don't have any cats. So
I know. No. It's a cute plant.
Okay. So like the current job that I hold, I started in 2007 as a guy, and life went on.
We're not gonna name names. We're not gonna name where she works.
Yeah,
Nope.
I kind of just like worked there, and then on my own had, it was starting to break down for me. Like my eggness was starting to come to an end. And that started around 2013. And I really didn't understand what was happening. Actually, I basically figured out like, hey, I want a vagina, actually. I think that would be all right. I brought that up with my wife at the time, who promptly freaked out on me. She was not aligned with that situation, let's just say, at the time. And so I stuffed that back in the bottle. Like, well, guess I'll live with that one. Yeah, we all know how that turns out. So I sort of did an internal journey at that point of, what does this mean? Here's a new open question. What is this? And then there was still the open question of, why am I different from everybody else? And then there's this. What is going on with me? There is like something I need to figure this stuff out. And so I sort of went into this deep research phase of like figuring out like of the things I could like identify and point out and Google about. I Googled my way to an answer on both of them. I figured out I was autistic, and then I figured out that I'm suffering from gender dysphoria. And then it was there was kind of this side realization that that I needed to stop drinking alcohol, because growing up on a ranch, it's part of the culture. And so that's a whole nother part of my life. Like, I grew up making my dad drinks, mixed drinks with whiskey at age 4. It was fun for him to give me an assignment, like, go make me a whiskey. And so I would. And then I would take little sips off it just to make sure it was, too standard. And then he's like, yeah, you're making a pretty good drink there. And so there's that. Like, I was drinking alcohol at age 4, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So I reached a point in 2014 of like, sort of these things that have happened over my life, sort of things that made me question whether I should, maybe I should stop drinking. Maybe I should try that as an experiment because it was kind of scary and I was like pretty steeped in it all, right? And just asking myself the question, when's the last time that you've went a whole year without drinking? And I went backwards in time and like age 4, that's pretty dang sad. 4-year-old, seriously. So I'm like, all right, well, how hard can it be? Let's just stop drinking now for 1 year. Let's see how it goes. So I stopped drinking in 2014. Just didn't join any kind of programs or anything. Just stopped drinking. And it turns out there's a reason why I was drinking. It was it was self-medication for my anxiety. And so whenever that was gone, there was no coping mechanisms anymore. And then things started to really accelerate with my coming out. I really had to start asking myself questions of like, I started to get panic attacks. I started to get like really super anxious about everything. So like my research kind of accelerated too. And so I came to the realization that, I'm autistic, I've got gender dysphoria, I could continue where I'm going, what I'm doing, and just drink myself to an early grave, like my uncle who died of alcoholism. I've got children, and so they'll see me as some drunk until I'm dead. And is that something that they want to live with, to have like that as a parent? And whatever downward spiral that would entail, and how, my personality would have totally been affected by that, and it wouldn't have been for the better. Like, that isn't a very healthy option for anybody. It's not healthy for me, and it isn't healthy for my marriage, and isn't healthy for my children. There's no one benefits from this line. There's like unaliving myself in some form, because like bottling up gender dysphoria for that long, I couldn't do it for very much longer. Something had to happen. And like, okay, what's the healthy path forward here? Let's just focus on what's the healthy path forward. The healthy path forward was me to come out and take HRT. That was what I was thinking, like, oh, gender dysphoria, you come out as trans and you take HRT. And then your dysphoria sort of like lessens. I'm like, wow, okay, that sounds it sounds like the end of my marriage. That sounds like something my wife at the time wouldn't go for. That sounds like a path where I would lose a lot of family. There was a lot of like calculus going on in my brain of the implications of going down that path. But it ended up actually being it ended up actually being the only way forward that was healthiest. And so that's kind of what I focused on. What is healthiest? What's healthiest for my children? What's healthiest for me? Sure, my family wouldn't understand, and probably lose them. I wasn't really that close to them anyway, actually. I'd lose my marriage, which I wasn't really, it was sort of like on its way out anyhow. And I was, it would provide like a convenient escape, I suppose. And then it came to my work. Like, what would wearing work do about me coming out? Well, it just so happens that my work had a white paper, um, a toolkit, white paper PDF thing that specifically outlines this is what we do when someone comes out at work. We run through the steps. We engage HR and your manager and all these other people. We get everyone on the same page. We do, it's kind of like a very coordinated announcement sort of deal. We change all your stuff in the back end. Like, we've got it all handled. And I'm like, well, that's reassuring that, at least whenever I come out at work, it's going to be not a complete disaster. So like, I tried to find a therapist. That was the first thing that you needed to do. Try to find a therapist that would, be able to talk to. That was really hard back then. And this was, when was this? 2014, 2015. Trying to find a therapist that knew trans stuff in my area that I could talk to about it. That would qualify for me to actually get on hormone therapy. And so I just started to learn that whole, figuring out the insurance, figuring out what I had to do. I didn't even know what WPATH was at the time. That came kind of a year later. Like, once I started to figure out I was trans, then I started to really research into that whole thing. Like, okay, well, I guess I'm a woman. That's interesting and weird, but makes a lot of sense because I remember the Katamari Damacy ball of rolling tidbits of, why are you different? Why is this thing? And like, it was either autism or it was being trans. All the way back. Like,
Yeah.
all right, well, this answered all the questions. So like, I came out and I lost a lot of family and I lost my marriage. And but work was a best case scenario. And I'm very happy about that because it was very well done, my coming out at work. Everyone at that point, like, oh, they were actually prepped. Like, a trans woman flew out from the East Coast and
That's great.
like sat down with the entire engineering team and said, and like kind of taught them trans 101 so I wouldn't have to.
Great.
It was actually bundled together with another person coming out at work too. So it was just the two of us coming out at work at the same time. And then after that point, it was like everyone treated me with very respectful. There was actually no incidents at all, and it really hasn't been since then. They used my new name, new pronouns, everything. Like, so in my case, it was best case scenario. We had like, our business was prepared. They already had something written that they could follow. I now belong to like trans advocacy, sort of ERG level stuff at my work. I am in charge of the white paper that was originally the one that I followed. Like, now I'm actually contributing content to it and curating it for other trans people coming out of work. I'm about to go somewhere to like, advertise the fact that our company has one of these white papers and maybe you should too. So like, that was, that was the whole coming out at work thing. And really the more traumatic piece of it was just coming out as trans to begin with and losing and watching people grieve, because really what it is.
Yeah.
It's a lot of grief. It's a lot of grief There's a lot of people thinking that they knew you and now they think that they don't. There's a lot of people thinking you're dead. There's a lot of people thinking that that they've lost you, and it's painful to watch people go through a grieving process, and sometimes they don't come out of it,
Yeah.
and then they blame you for it. And like, yeah, I just can't. Oh, you can't own that. It's not mine to own. That's not mine to
Yeah.
own. That's your grief. You're the only person that can own that. So I think that's important to keep in mind, is that if you're coming out and people are grieving, that's their problem. If they don't
Yeah.
have any coping mechanisms for that, that's their problem. And it shouldn't hold you up from actually being authentic. That's
100%.
this is my problem. Being authentic. Like, and that's the whole point of this talk, right? Is authenticity.
Mhm.
I felt like I needed to be authentic. I couldn't hold this in anymore. It wasn't healthy for me to do that. I had no choice.
Yeah.
I had no choice but to take HRT. It's going to feminize me. I'm going to come out at work and change my name and all of that. I want to be known as Justine as a woman. She, her pronouns. Pretty straightforward. And since then yes, I've had surgeries. Yes, I've had all of the surgeries. And yes, I don't regret anything. Zero regrets about any of the things I have done to myself. And I am super happy. And there's just a handful of things that I'd like to still work on. But for the most part, that's the best thing I've ever done. It's the
Yeah.
most healthy thing I've ever done for myself, besides not drinking alcohol. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I completely get where you're coming from. I mean, I'm fond of saying that the only regret that I have is that I didn't do it sooner.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So, and I wanted to circle back to something else that you were talking about, how people grieve, and they're grieving the person that you were, and not everyone comes out of that. Not everyone is able to accept who you really are, and I'm really sorry that you had to sacrifice so much for your own happiness. And that's unfortunately the world that we live in. But at the end of the day, we can't control how people are going to react. And it's also not our responsibility. I mean, if someone can't handle the fact that we're trans, well, I mean, sorry to be blunt, but that's a you problem. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so, and yeah, so I mean, I have a bit of a personal stake in hearing about um, trans, your transition at work, because I'm actually going back to my own job next week after not being at work for 2 years. And the last time I was there, I was a dude, so I'm having to go through all of this stuff myself. So it's very helpful to me personally to hear about your experiences, transitioning at work. Um, what has it been like transitioning medically? Because I mean, it's one thing to come out as trans and, asking everyone to use your new name and your new pronouns, but then it's another thing when your appearance changes or stuff like that. So what has that been like for you?
Um, it's been definitely life changing. It's actually one of those. It's like one of those things that you don't realize just how much it matters until you do it. And as far as bottom surgery goes, I had it on the books to do bottom surgery maybe a year or two before I even got it. The first time I pushed it out because I needed to do more therapy.
Yep.
I wasn't integrated enough internally to be able to uh, get over some of the anxieties that I had. And I think I think people need to hear that, if you're not ready, you're you're not ready until you are, and you'll know it when you are. And then I was. And then and then COVID hit, and then I had to reschedule my surgeon, which was in New York, and then schedule for another
They were
surgeon, which
doing
was closer to
they were
home.
doing mass graves right then.
It was so
It was
bad.
brutal.
I was super sad about it, but
You
also
were.
it's like, I'm not gonna fly into Brooklyn and be in the middle of COVID and try to get a surgery done. And I didn't even know if they'd even open up the hospitals for it. And even then, like, do I really want to be in a hospital with that much COVID flying around? Probably not. So, like, eventually I did get it, bottom surgery. And there's YouTube videos about my before and afters about that, which you can go see and look up. Go to GenderMeowster
Yeah,
YouTube. And
they're on my channel.
yeah,
There's a playlist about your bottom surgery journey. I don't remember if we made a playlist for any of your
yeah.
other procedures.
I don't.
At one
think
point,
so.
at one point, we counted how many surgeries we've had between the two of us since we got together, 3-4 years ago,
Yeah.
and now I've forgotten.
Okay. Well, I
'Cause
can
you
count on my
had
hand. So
let's do it,
bottom surgery 1,
right?
and then like, what was the next one?
You had your revisions to your bottom surgery.
Revisions to bottom surgery. I
You
had
had
FFS 1 and 2,
Yep.
and then breast augmentation and body contouring. So
Yeah.
there's that many.
Did you get any revisions to any of those other ones? Did you only have revisions with bottom
No,
surgery, or was there any other revisions?
no other revisions.
Because you also drove out to see the doctor for follow-ups 3 months later and 6 months later, and it was like all these trips, like
Yeah,
5-6 hour drive away. And I was like, you could do
yeah,
that by
yeah,
yourself. I'm tired. And then I've
yeah,
had my top surgery part 2 because I had a reduction before I ever met you, but it wasn't sufficient. So now I've had a top surgery and I had my uterus deleterist.
The uterus.
Yeah. I also had a surgery on my nose, but that wasn't for trans reasons. It was for breathing enough reasons. So
mhm,
that's 8 surgeries in like 3 or 4 years. Like 2 surgeries a year on average. It's been a time. We've been through a lot
yeah,
of surgeries together.
Yeah.
T for T couples are lucky if they get to have this many surgeries, though, to be honest. Like, it's hard to access medical care and have
Yeah.
the money
But
for it.
it's really fantastic that both of you can be there for each other during your
Yeah.
surgery recoveries. Cause
Yeah.
I know that's a big point of anxiety for me is like, I mean, I live alone and it's like some of these surgeries, you're basically bedridden and you're not able to take care of yourself. It's like, well, I got nobody
Yeah.
to take care of me. So it's, having that person in your life that is going to be there for you is
Mhm.
so important.
Yeah.
yeah,
I can tell you one of
absolutely.
the most important things that I learned is it's crucial to have like 2 people the first 3 days or so. 2 people who are
Yeah,
not the recovering person
Mm.
because the recovering person basically needs round the clock care. And so you have to take shifts. You have to have a day person and a night person.
Mm.
And also, what I learned for me is I'm both disabled and terrible at cooking, and nobody wants me to be cooking the food that is supposed to be supporting Cappy's physical recovery. So we have been very lucky to have darling friends that have taken, a weekend or part of a week off work to come help us with the initial recovery period of some of these procedures. And I just want to give a shout out to all of you. I'm not going to say your names and out you on my podcast, but you know who you
know who
are.
you are.
You saw us all naked and bloody and bruised and gave us ice packs and went through that with us. And we're grateful for each and every one of you that have taken that journey with us. It really does take a village.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've definitely seen my share of absolute gross of
Yeah.
surgery. Like
Oh, yeah.
some of that stuff, like FFS surgery, the face gets all swollen, and
Mhm.
it takes an emotional toll to see your face like that in a mirror.
Yeah. Yeah. I can
And
imagine.
it's just like uh I will look normal again someday, right?
No, you're real cute.
Yeah, no, I am. That's exactly right.
Aw.
I consider
Um,
myself pretty hot. I look in the mirror, I'm like, you're hot
Yeah,
today.
I mean that's.
You
I mean,
know?
we'll get into that later, but it's always nice when you feel that gender euphoria when you look in the
Yeah,
mirror, like what you see. Because as
yeah,
trans folks, for most of our lives, we've looked in the mirror and not liked what we've seen. So
it's
it's
true.
you know we'll take those W's when we can get them.
Yep.
I have more
Yeah.
thank yous I need to add. Um, we also had the support of people from afar. So we had people like helping us with med tracking, like like we had people making spreadsheets for us, and we also had people like calling us every couple hours. Like there was one point where I was recovering from one of my surgeries, and 2 or 3 different people were taking turns calling me to remind me to take my meds. And it was like we had all these different time zones. Like I think Ray was one of them, and I think Mom was one of them. And so then I had like every 3 hours, one of them would call me. And those were because Cappy was still working right then. She didn't take time off for my recovery because she'd already taken so much time off throughout the year for her surgeries. She didn't have time left to take off for mine. And so I think both Ray and Mom were calling me during like sleeping and working hours, and then Cappy was doing kind of evenings in our time zone. Um, and yes, Ray is a spreadsheet wizard and makes excellent med tracking spreadsheets, even from multiple countries away.
Sweet.
Um, so, and the Clouder, like our work community, like kept the streams going on the channel when I was away for all of this because I had to go for both mine and Cappy's, and so we're trying to start this cool online community, but then it's like, well, time to go be trans some more, I guess. Heck, and like as a Twitch streamer, like you can't just be offline for 2 weeks a bunch of times in a year, or you lose your community. Like people go find someone else to watch. They want other communities to spend time with, because the streams can become a part of someone's work routine or a part of any routine, right? And so when you interrupt the routine, especially in a community that's so like autistic and ADHD heavy as ours, who really relies on routine, like it just could be disastrous. So I just also wanted to add thank you to all the contributors that made something happen on the channel. TM arms flailing goes here, so that the channel would stay alive and we'd all have a place to come home to at the end of it all. It really has taken a whole bunch of us to make all of this go at the same time, and I'm just so deeply grateful for everyone's support. I feel really lucky. I feel really lucky. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
grateful for everyone's support. Absolutely. It's like a community effort, and we've got each other, and we're as far as like the trans community itself, nobody knows really what we go through unless you feel it personally in a way.
Yeah,
Mhm.
So
yeah.
um encouraging that is really important.
Yeah. So that actually kind of dovetails us nicely towards my next question, which is, well, I've talked about you a lot on the show, Cappy, because you're my wife. And so whenever
Yeah.
trans femme guests have been on, I've been like, oh yeah, my wife has that experience too. I'm just like, oh yeah, my wife, blah, blah, blah. Um, so,
Okay.
and part of that is because your experiences have so much shaped mine, right? I mean, I came out as non-binary, I think around the same time as you came out as trans, but you started medically transitioning much sooner than I did. And I'm pretty sure I talked about this when I was the guest on the show, but you have played such a huge role in supporting me while I faced my own fears about realizing I'm autistic, starting HRT, like having my whole sexuality identity get turned on its head because, testosterone
Yeah.
melted my brain, like just all of it. And
Testosterone's a hell of a drug.
it is,
Yes.
whoa, it's an adventure. Um, but, the other piece of that is like, not only did we do that and we had our private moments that we shared about all of those pieces, which honestly would end up in a check-in like 2 months later. I'd have like my own private like anxiety, fear, and then I'd like get used to whatever that fear was, and then I was able to kind of share it with others. And the reason I make those trans check-ins is because I wanted other non-binary and trans people coming along after me to know that those fears are real. Like I still remember when I was like, "Oh, I'm scared I'm going to lose my singing voice. Like T's going to change my voice," and that fear. I'm still finding my way back to singing, but I'm getting there. We're getting there. It's not a lost
Mhm.
cause. Um, and so I guess what I'm trying to get to is what has it been like for you, Cappy, taking this content creation journey with me for the last 3 years? So we're still talking about trans at work, but now it's my work instead of yours. Haha. Because you've played a
Uh,
huge role in this community, but people don't always know what you do in the far background. So I guess, yeah, what has that been
sure.
like for you?
Well, like I very much like being a part of the community, but I also like being a part of the community that is sort of not front and center. Like I'm fine with being the sidekick, sort of the was like the comic insult dog, kind of off to the side of
Oh,
Triumph.
triumph. Love
Yes.
that
Oh my
guy.
God. I
So
was a
good.
Conan O'Brien enjoyer back in those days. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Like I am I'm more than happy being in the background supporting you because we both have our own paths to trans advocacy work. And this is how your trans advocacy work is manifesting, is making Twitch content and supporting a community on Discord. And it's great. I love seeing it. And mine is, at work, I stand up for all the trans employees at my workplace and really, really ensure that they get what they need to be authentic at work, essentially. I like to think of the toolkit that I maintain as a gender authenticity toolkit. Because really what it is, it allows people to be authentic and be normal people, people that don't have to hide anything. So we both approach our trans advocacy work, and I like supporting you in the background, handing you plates of food and making funny voices and um, adding where I can. And I'm perfectly happy with like not being in the spotlight. That's your job, right? Being in the spotlight and interviewing people, that's fine. And I, will make your computer go and do all the things in the background for, all the tech. And that's where my happy place lies. But like the content creation piece, it's just it's not my it's not my strong suit to be in front of people like this, like all the time. So
yeah. I still like when we have hype trains on a Wednesday night and you'll come play Zelda terribly for 5 minutes. It's one of my favorite things that
I wish I could
happens.
sing my my stretch goals song, but it's
Oh my gosh,
PG-13 right now.
it's too spicy for this stream.
Or
Yeah.
the ice pack song, or I don't know.
You'll just have to wait for a Genderful After Dark.
Ooh, Genderful After Dark, yeah.
Make
Yeah,
some
totally.
special
Invite
Patreon content.
invite me to that.
The spicy Genderfuls.
Invite me to that and ask me all the spicy things, and then I can let loose. Yeah, totally.
We'll have the spicy Catboy Meowster After Dark stream soon. I
We'll do the
acquired
After
some
Dark
more
After
affordable
Dark
cat
hot.
ears.
We'll do After Dark hot tub where we're just like green screened into a hot tub,
We'll have to ask Hexagonal how to do that because they did such a good job with their VTuber hot tub stream during one of our mutual aid events.
YouTuber. That's funny.
Ray did a rendition of the
cool.
of the Stretch Goals song and made Kira giggle the other day.
I just want to give a quick shout out to Kira Skiro in chat, the GenderFU asterisk podcast, and I'll let the listener fill in the blanks as to what that asterisk stands for.
Nice.
So good.
I just want to clip the whole show. It's so fun.
I mean,
Not
it
really
is
a
a
clip if
clip.
it's the whole
It's just a
show.
VOD, right? It's like watch the VOD.
I know,
Yeah.
but like, there's all these little moments I want to catch and enjoy later. You did giggle at the Churchill song. That's awesome. It's great. I keep thinking we need to make an album one day with all of our goofy songs in it.
What I want to see are people doing covers of the things that I do. I think
Yeah.
that's hilarious to me. It's kind of like when I saw, what was it? Who was that? It was like Sunbury doing the ribs thing.
Oh,
Ray will
Yeah,
record.
it's funny.
Ray will
It's so
record one for you.
funny.
We should just have a contest. We should have everyone does covers of our like channel stuff. So it could be anything. It could be the sub song or the bit song or one of Cappy's little sound commands or funny clips of Miranda doing mischief during things, whatever.
I've been known to, spur on some mischief from time to time. I am a bit of a gremlin, I put on a professional face for this show, but on my show, I am 100% gremlin.
Everyone go follow Nassattack on Twitch right now if you're not. Also on YouTube. NASSATTACK.
If you want to see very sexy Baldur's Gate streams, come to my channel.
Maximum chaos. Cappy got to catch one of your streams recently, I think.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, this is Baldur's Gate. Interesting. Like
I saw you
not
go
a gamer,
live and I was like,
so
Cappy, you should go hang out with Miranda.
Like I don't play video games. I'm pretty famously not a gamer actually. I write software for a living. So like I'm interested in how something was written and I could write it probably, but I don't derive any pleasure from playing video games at most. And this is why
we'll make a gamer out of you,
me playing Zelda, I'm just like, what do I do? I'm running around like just randomly just pushing buttons.
I find that surprising that you don't consider yourself like. So my opinion is that everyone is a gamer. They just play different games. I mean, you do crossword puzzles, you're a gamer. But it's interesting to me that you say that you're not a gamer because you made a Katamari reference before, and that is like, that's game.
My brain is like that. I collect information as a special interest. Like I could probably be on Jeopardy and do pretty well, actually. Like I like accumulating trivia. So
I think you would like to play. I'd like sit down and play that game because that's a very accessible game for non-gamers, and there's just something so relaxing about rolling a ball around and picking stuff up and then hearing people scream.
Take Cappy to the pub quiz.
To the pub quiz. Yeah, that'd be fun.
I like doing the pub quiz, but I can't really drink much at a pub. I'll have a soda water and lime.
Yes, I mean, I'll do pub trivia and I'll have a Diet Coke.
Cappy has participated in like Jackbox when we were playing with the kids during the early lockdowns, and she also has been willing to indulge the rest of us in some tabletop role playing games from time to time, but mostly because it gave her a chance to have an activity to do with the kids. One thing I love about her is her mind she has such an engineer's mind. Like she just, like the game to her is figuring out how to solve things. So it's like, how can we solve the fencing issue in our property? And then we sat around for like 3 hours yesterday, like looking at different types of fencing. And I'm like, what about a cob fence? And now her brain's like, ooh, let's think about this for 3 hours. Like I just see the gears start turning in her head. I'm like, okay, I'm going to wander off now. Have fun thinking about that as long as you want to. Or like, I'll be like, hey, can you code something that like when I type words, it'll make each letter a different color of the rainbow and then repeat? Because I want like a rainbow font. And then she just like whipped something up in Python one time for the lols. And I was like, great. Can you put in a word? She was like, no. I was like, okay.
That just saves me from having to learn VBA again.
So what has it been like for you, Cappy, transitioning with children? Because you have some teenagers.
Well, I thought coming out, I tried to pre-wire coming out with them by just getting gender books and like having them, reading that to them. and having them try to understand that there's people that experience gender differently. And then I came out to them as a woman, and they were actually like the easiest people to come out to. It was actually surprisingly easy to come out to my kids. Scary. It's one of those it was just so, that's like one of those super fearful things I felt in my body, like, oh my God, this could go any, of all the relationships that I wanted to make sure I kept, it's the relationship between me and my children. Super important to me as a dad. I'm still a dad to them. They still call me dad. I think that's kind of everyone's call, but they knew me as dad. I am their dad, technically. I'm their father on their birth certificate. So they still call me dad, and then like certain public situations, I've told them like, just call me my first name. It's not TransCapybara. Just call me by first name when you're in public in certain questionable situations, and I'll let you know when that is. But otherwise, just call me dad. That's fine. You don't have to change anything about that. You do have to use my pronouns, though. You just have to not he, me around. And they don't. And it's been pretty consistent. And it's super easy for them to adapt. And actually, they didn't really grieve anything.
Yeah.
Not so much with other family members, but with them, super easy, I found. And they were young, too. And I think that really helped.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think at that age, you're still kind of open to new ideas, and you haven't become jaded adults like us. So I think there's a lot more acceptance there, going like down to the younger generation versus going up to the older generation. So that's not something that we need to talk about, because I know that's personally that's a bit of a sore point in my case. But yeah, in terms of generations, as generations progress, they kind of become more progressive and are better able to deal with new ideas. So I'm very glad that you still have a good relationship with your children, because I mean, I see it. Like, I see how important it is to you. And, I
Yeah,
had the good
it's
fortune
super important.
I had the good fortune of hanging out with both of you, because most people know this, listening to this know you, but know this already. But I came down and visited both of you this summer, and yeah, I had
We
a really
went to
great time.
Trans Pride together and
We
tabled for the
did, yes,
podcast.
yes, absolutely. So, and I didn't really interact with your kids very much, but I could see that how important it was. So,
Yeah.
we do have a question from the chat. So Ray asks, how many coding languages do you know?
Oh, gosh. Oh, let's count them. C, C++, Java, Python, Perl, Modula 2, Pascal, VBA. I guess you could count that as a programming language, maybe.
I mean,
JavaScript.
if we're counting Pascal, then I guess we're counting VBA.
Yeah. Like scripting and like bash scripting. What else? I don't really know Rust all that much, but it's kind of on the shelf to learn. I don't really know Go, but that's on the shelf to learn. I mean, I've dealt with enough in my career as a software engineer / systems administrator to, if I don't know it and I need to like fix something, then I will learn it and then fix it.
Yeah.
And that means that I get to learn, a lot of different things.
Yeah. Yeah. So I imagine, as an engineer, you kind of learn a lot of things on an ad hoc basis. That's, I try to approach things that way as well. So
Yeah.
it's often a conversation that I have with my employer. It's like, well, I could learn this, but if I'm not going to use it, I'm just going to forget it. So it's much better for
Yeah.
me to do things on an ad hoc basis when I need to. So,
Yeah.
but I don't do a whole lot of programming in my job. So, but that's good change. Oh boy, I'm not looking forward to that. But to bring it back to our main topic here, what would you say you've learned about yourself from being a parent to 2 children?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm a role model to them.
Mm.
I and I think it goes beyond just being a dad to them. It's being authentic in front of them and around them to the world and showing that. And there isn't like this dualistic, oh, I'm only trans, some of the time.
Mm.
And then I'm in the closet another part of the time, and show them like, that there's, I've personally gotten over the fear of being out, and they get to see me not being fearful.
Yeah.
I feel that's important. I think it's an important lesson. It's like, you can be authentic and you don't need to be afraid. And if someone has a problem with that, that's their problem. And having that life lesson taught to them of what do you own and what do other people own, and knowing what they own will lead them into more authenticity kind of by default. Because if they know they own something, then it'll be incumbent upon them to maybe improve themselves or introspect on themselves and know that it's not someone else's job to do that. And as a parent teaching them something, it's me teaching them how to be authentic and how to do it in a way where you keep fear sort of where it belongs. There, it's healthy to recognize, but it's also healthy to figure out like where it's holding you back, and where anxiety about the future. Well, if it hasn't happened yet, then where's the anxiety coming from? So like giving them tools to introspect. It's something my parents never gave me. And really that really comes down to, my parenting sort of philosophy is, what was I not taught? What was I not taught that I wish I was? What tools do I want to give my children that I wasn't given? So that they have an easier time living their authentic life and passing that lesson down to their own children. So it is not perpetuating the generational trauma that I grew up in and that I overcame. I don't want that to reignite itself. That's not my job. My job is to be their parent.
Yeah. And I really wish more parents had that attitude of, not perpetuating generational trauma because, oof, being a victim of a generational trauma myself, I had a very different approach for ending that trauma and ending that cycle. And but yeah, I really wish there was more parents like you out there who really has that introspection and is able to take that sort of thing seriously. So that's
I
really,
do want to
really
make
sweet.
kind of a side comment of any parents of trans people, trans children, trans youth that are listening or will listen to this, wherever it may be. Thank you very much for being an ally to your children, to your trans youth children. There's nothing more important you could have done as a parent than that. And if you are a parent that is experiencing a person that is trying to express themselves, listen to them and be a parent. And it's your job now to go introspect yourself and ask yourself why you may not be accepting them, because there is no other option. Children are going to be who they are, and usually they know more than you do. please just be awesome. Please be awesome to people. Please be awesome to trans youth. And if you've got questions, you know where to come. You're listening to all three of us here, and you've got the means to reach out and ask questions, and I encourage you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
The Discord server is a great place to have those good faith conversations. You know, we're mostly trans people. So, you know, you're going to get some trans hot takes. But, you know, if you are a cisgender parent to a trans child, like the server is 18 plus, so your kids can't join our server, but you can. And as long as you're respectful, you're welcome to be in the space. But, you know, there's something for me that feels important to say about how I feel like parents of trans youth having a chance to talk to adult trans people and hear us tell our stories, there might be a way for those parents to identify the moments where their struggle to adjust can cause lasting harm to their kid if they show it, right? It's really long ago now, but I think it's episode 14 maybe, or 16, somewhere in there. My mom was on the show as my guest, and we talked about it and what it was like for her when I came out and changed my name and all of this stuff. Like, mom helped me recover from my breast reduction surgery way before I ever had top surgery. And at the time, I didn't think it was about gender, but my mom was like, "This might be a little bit about gender." Like, her little weird wheels started turning in her head, and I was like, "No, it's because of back pain." It was both. It was both. Looking back now, but yeah, it is really important for parents to process their feelings or grief or whatever is going on with other parents, other adults, not their child. Like, don't tell
Yeah.
your kid that you're grieving, at least not in the beginning. Maybe a couple years later when you're cool and everything is fine and you're kind of over it, you can tell them after the fact that that was part of your journey if it comes up. But like, please, for the love of God, don't tell your children that you're grieving the loss of who they were, because it is so difficult to assert your new identity to people, to have someone be like, "Oh, I'm hanging on to this old version of you." It's really destructive, like
Mm-hmm.
mentally, emotionally, psychically, in your psyche,
Yeah.
brain. Like,
It's
it's one of the worst things you can do. So
it's not
process
it's not
that
the
with
kid's
other
job.
people, not your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's not the kid's
yeah.
job to do that emotional labor.
Yeah. No, I agree with
That's
that.
your
100%. And
Yep.
not
And
just
if
not
you
just for the parents, it's for, all the adults in that kid's life. Like,
Yep.
they may not have a close relationship with their parents. They may have other like parental figures in their life, or they may have other adults in their life that they look up to. So it's so important. And it's not just kids either. Or if you come out as an adult,
Yeah.
yeah. So everything you
Yeah.
just said
Could
applies
be your
equally.
adult children as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I
So
can just tell you, I'm so glad that my mom handled those feelings with someone else or other people and didn't put all that on me. Like, that's one of the smartest choices that she made in that journey. And I'm happy to pass that wisdom on to any parent who will listen. Yeah,
Yep.
it's powerful stuff. Well, let me switch topics and let's talk about authenticity, and then we'll take a break and we'll hear the boat story.
Sure.
So we have 2 more questions on the authenticity topic. Can you give us an example of what navigating our facets of authenticity means to you, Kathy?
Navigating the facets of authenticity. That's it's a wide subject.
Yes.
But let's start out by just kind of laying the groundwork for what I mean by this. There's things that I've discovered in my own life that I've had to reckon with internally. Some of those things I feel like need to be expressed outwardly, because I might be like, if I'm reckoning with something that means that I'm masking somehow, like I'm showing a front of some sort to people, so that as to prevent them from seeing the true me in any respect. I've got to ask myself, is that working for me? Is that a tool that's actually, you know, um, working for me? Or was this like something that my child me just constructed and is just now just here still? So it's reevaluating my coping mechanisms, my survival skills, my things that I've done, to protect myself. Now that I'm grown up, I can protect my inner children better. I can be a parent to them. Like, okay, that allows me to show a more authentic piece of me and still keep me protected because I've now kind of transformed sort of the shell that I show on the outside. Now that people are seeing deeper, but now I'm protecting I'm sort of focusing inward. And so part of that was coming out as autistic. And I masked all sorts of symptoms, and I probably still do to some respect. And that's kind of an ongoing journey. Um, I've masked that away. And I've got to figure out how to slowly peel that back. And it's deprogramming. But it is a facet of authenticity of like showing people I'm autistic and I flail my hands around, my eyes dart around everywhere whenever I'm talking, and sometimes I don't have the best words coming out of my mouth. Like I've realized that my words that come out of my mouth come from a different part of my brain than my words that come out of my fingers. Like I can type, and my written communication is completely different from how I speak. And sometimes I read what I write, and I like will stumble upon the things that I actually wrote. Like it doesn't come; it comes out of different parts of me. And that's fine. That's great. That's just who I am. I can't change that. It's just who I am. COVID did me a great service in a way where it forced me to work from home, and I didn't have to mask in front of everybody. In fact, meeting my partner, my spouse.
Socially mask, you mean, instead of physically mask?
Yeah.
Like autism socially mask. That's the version of mask, you mean?
Socially mask.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. So, GenderMeowster and I moved in together in 2019, and we lived together in the same place. And social masking fell away, and we both got to see each other in a very authentic way. And it was like safe container for that because we're both autistic. And it was great. It's liberating to feel that. And so like when I'm in public now, I actually feel a lot more raw because all of those the things that I was doing to be in public, I don't do anymore. And now people are like kind of side-eye me a little bit more. And I've got to be okay with that because I'm trying to be more authentic to myself. Like this is a consequence. It's like coming out as trans and everyone like rejecting me. Well, this is like coming out as autistic and like showing that I'm not going to be masking my social, stuff around people. Well, too bad. That's your problem. This is who I am. And if you're going to treat me weird, I'm going to notice that. And I'm going to interact with someone else then. So like, there's that. And then there's the facet of being trans. Like, that's, at 8 years after coming out, I'm sort of just done with that. In a way, like I got through, I consider myself that I've gotten through my puberty phase. Like I was was angry for a long time, like teenage angst at 40 years old. It was
Yeah.
not fun. Not fun. No. Uh, yeah. Um, and I got through it, and now I'm a lot more solid. And you know, I I'm happy about being solid. That's great. It's a great feeling to be solid. Um, and now I've got like strength in myself to be authentic in front of everybody being trans. Like,
Mm.
who has the problem now? Right? Uh, and you know, I see a lot of people struggle with that in my community. Um, but I know that just given enough time, they're gonna reach the point that I'm at. They'll just reach it. They'll reach either an age or a maybe some realization like, I could just be a person. Um, the trans thing, I don't really think that I can go around my day and like, I'm just Justine, just I'm just a person, I I go about my day. Don't even think that I am a trans woman or anything. Just like, I'm just doing my thing. Sometimes I feel like I'm reverting backwards, but that's sort of its own thing, I'm going out and doing yard work, and I'm putting on the Carhartts, and I I'm wearing clothes that I used to wear, and if I used to feel weird about that, but now I'm like, I'm just gonna be like super chunky lesbian over here doing yard work and owning that.
That's a vibe.
I know. I've even got like the Carhartt hat. Like, I don't like hats. I don't like anything on my
No,
head. And it
you
like
really
Oh,
don't.
it's
It's
so
true.
bad.
It's a
Or
sensory nightmare
it
for you.
just even wearing masks. I know this is so bad about COVID, but like wearing masks in public, I can only do it. I can only tolerate it for so long. Otherwise,
mm,
like I will like melt down. I do get into meltdown situations if I
mm,
wear a mask too long. And I'm like, I just can't do it.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah, no, for
I
sure.
and
So
just
then she
and
comes
just
home. She doesn't just give up and stop wearing a mask. She comes home
yeah,
instead.
I'm like, I just can't. I have to like go somewhere where I can take this off. And I'm like overstimulated. I get super overstimulated sometimes. I'm
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
overloaded, and I'm just like, nope.
Yeah, no, the sensory overload, that's I mean, that's a classic autism symptom. I
Oh
mean, that's
yeah.
something I deal with as well because I also get sensory overload situations. I mean, slightly
Yeah.
differently, but yeah. I did want to circle back to something else you were saying about about masking, about how you kind of present different facets of yourself. And this is, I mean, I still struggle with my own authenticity, not so much with the gender stuff, because I mean, I'm out and I'm trans and whatever. That's who I am. If you have a problem with it, that's your problem. Um, but kind of the autistic part of it, where kind of I've had to learn how to the quote unquote right way to behave in society and like kind of pass myself off as a neurotypical person. And no, I mean, no one told me to do that. That's just something that's, I just intrinsically learned how to do just by observing other people's behavior and mimicking it. And I don't like to this day, I don't understand why people do things that they do or they say the things that they do because I just have a really hard time understanding other people. But um, as an autistic person yourself, having that authentic experience where you stop doing that and you don't behave in ways that society kind of expects you to behave, or um, that is, I think that's really important to hear. And I know that's something I very much struggle with. And I hope that anyone listening to this um, kind of can take something of value from this conversation. So very much so. We do have we have some Star Wars chatter in the chat. Meowster, did you wanna talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, I made a joke in the Twitch chat that we're AUT for AUT, which is autistic and trans for autistic and trans. And then Mirami says that starts sounding like a Star Wars vehicle and AT-AT. And then I said, Cappy would love that joke. And then Miranda put in her trans rebel Star Wars emojis. And then Ray made a joke about AT for AT coming to destroy the turf star. So that was all glorious. And also, Cappy, this is a twofold question. What is the first character in media you ever related to? You saw the character and you thought, oh, that's me. And also, why do trans people like Star Wars and Star Trek so much? Why? We love it. Why do we love it? We love it.
The first character I really related to, like I was watching, I was sort of my first fandom, I suppose, was Star Wars. Star Wars came out around the time I was born. Start with the first Star Wars. I didn't see the first Star Wars in the theater. I'm not that old. But I did see it on Laserdisc. If anyone knows what that is.
Oh, I remember Laserdiscs, all right. That was a fun that existed.
Totally. So we would, I was living in the middle of the desert, and we had like one television channel that would come over the air. And so my family were like media starved, and they would drive the 30 miles to town, go to the video rental store. The video rental store was located in the industrial district next to the grain manufacturing plants or whatever. It wasn't even in downtown. It was like some warehouse, and it's just a weird, interesting part of town, right? We would rent a Laserdisc player, and then we would rent the Laserdiscs to play in it. And so we would rent Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back and those movies, right? Return of the Jedi hadn't come out yet. And then, I'd go home and watch them. And my family liked to watch movies more than once, and they didn't want to drive 30 miles to town every time they wanted to watch it. So they learned how to dub the movies from the warning, FBI warning, right? They learned how to dub the movies from the Laserdisc player onto video cassette with the VCR that they bought from Sears.
The early days of movie piracy.
Movie piracy. So we would scrape a movie off of the Laserdisc and onto videotapes, and I would watch Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back on repeat for years. And I was watching those, and I'm like, where do I see myself in this film? It wasn't Luke, and it wasn't really Leia, but I could relate to R2-D2. In fact, I've got an R2-D2 that I'd like to show everybody.
Let's do it after the break.
Let's do it after the break.
Our ad break.
All right, let's do it after the ad break.
So come back after the ad break to see some cool R2-D2s and hear the boat story. But first, Miranda has one more question for you.
Yes. So this kind of is going back to the whole idea of, masking and presenting different versions of yourself throughout your life. And as trans people, we kind of experience all stages of our life simultaneously, where we exist as different people. In fact, a friend of mine has a very good video about this topic, which I could talk about it for hours, but I'm trying to stay on topic here. But how would you say you merge together all the different experiences of your former selves with your current self?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's an interesting one. Yeah. Like, in a way, this is how I explain it. It's, my former self wanted me to exist. I call that former self my brother. And he's dead now. he got shipped to the underground, and it was a big ritual that I did. It was sort of an intentional act of releasing him of his duties. He did his job. He made me survive as long as I survived, um, and wanted me to exist because he knew that his time was short, and he knew that I needed to be out. So he let that happen, and sort of like, uh, he's gone, but the memories stayed, and I had to figure out how to incorporate that.
Mhm.
There were things that I learned that are very useful for me right now that I learned from him.
Mhm.
And I had to, I couldn't just wholesale say everything that I learned, everything that I was, I'm, I'm throwing it away. It's not worth anything to me. I can't say that.
Mhm.
Um, there are things that I want to keep. There's and I had to figure out how to roll that in. That means like sort of coming to terms with owning my masculinity as I am now. And it's still kind of a struggle, actually. I haven't really it's sort of like one of those things I still kind of want to make sure that my femininity doesn't get lost.
Yeah.
I kind of ride the line. I consider myself kind of a butch or futch, a femme butch. It's like right in the, I'm not femme enough to be a femme, and I'm not butch enough to be a butch. I am kind of
Mhm.
like right on the line. And
Mhm.
depending on the day, it could go, one way or the other. But
Mhm.
attitude wise, and and the way I come across to people, and this is one of the things I had to learn how to own, is my assertiveness. I learned assertiveness,
Mhm.
and confidence. And a woman with confidence and assertiveness comes off as very, to others, comes off as very masculine. And so I think that and it's such a big part of my personality that some people will just will kind of like sir me because they see that um, I've got a confidence and an assertiveness that not a lot of women have. And it's the energy I throw off, and it throws them off like, oh, you must be a dude.
Mhm.
Like, how can you be a woman and have this assertiveness?
Yeah.
Uh, it's
I
weird.
I know exactly what you mean. And I think that has less to do with being trans and more to do with how men are treated in society versus how women are treated in society. Whereas it's expected from men to be, assertive and confident, and it's expected from women to not be those things. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, it's I, f- I feel like it's an aspect that I don't want to give up.
Mhm.
Um, it's served me too well.
Yeah, and I very much relate to that. I mean, we're both trans women that, transitioned later in life where we had a whole life lived, as the gender we were assigned at birth. And I mean, you can't just throw away those decades of life, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's different when you're, transitioning at the age of 12 or transitioning as a teenager, versus transitioning as someone who's lived a whole life. And I've always seen that. I've always kind of seen myself as dying and being reborn several times over the course of my life as I go through different stages of my life, and you know, um, and this is just kind of the latest stage of that. And this version of me just happens to be a different gender than the old versions of me that have lived and died. That's
Yeah.
always how I've looked at it. And it's not always a gender thing. It's, but this is not my story. This is your story. But
I've
yeah,
experienced ego death too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's very, very relatable. And I think that's there's a lot of elder trans stories that need to be told, because this is a lot of a lot of the stories that are being told right now are from young people, which is great. But we need to tell our stories too. Uh,
Yeah.
so we are coming up on our final ad break of this stream. Master, did you have any closing thoughts before we take off for a little bit?
I wanted to add that Kira Skuro said in the chat, for added Star Wars trans vibes, I describe my style as Sith Butch.
I love that. I love that so much.
I wanted to get to the
Um,
second part of your question, Meowster, if we had time before the ad.
Yeah, we have 3 minutes.
Okay. The second part was why do so many trans folks love Star Wars and Star Trek so much? Well, that's an interesting one. I like Star Trek nowadays as my sort of go-to fandom. It's very hopeful. There's a lot of hope in it.
Mm.
It's assuming as a premise that humans figured it out. Humans figured it out, and we are all on the same page. And now that we're all on the same page and being humans with each other and awesome, let's go into space and be awesome with everyone else. And the values that come with that and how people are treated. It feels really good to me. It feels like that's a world I want to live in. Star Wars, I think I've outgrown it, honestly. It was great when I was a kid because it was really kind of the only thing that I knew. And there was a lot of toys that I could play with and pretend and play dolls, essentially. I played with dolls and they were Star Wars toys. Yeah, I still have my Princess Leia's little action figures from 1981 or something.
Those are probably worth a pretty penny now.
They probably are, yeah. But like Star Trek is hopeful and it fights against fascism, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. And Star Wars 2, I think with Andor, they're really getting into the fight against fascism thing for Star Wars. Like
100%.
that's the kind of stuff I'm into, is the rebellion, getting nitty-gritty into the rebellion, not so much the Force and all of that. It's magical to me, and magic, but like fighting against fascism, such an important thing we need to all do,
especially in today's
keep our eye on that. If there's any history lesson to pay attention to, it's World War II in the European theater, and what went on there, and getting to the real truth of what went on there. Because it's repeating itself, and I don't want it repeated. And there's lessons to be learned that we can apply in modern day to prevent it.
I'll just add that our friend Jessie Gender has a great video about Andor, which is a Star Wars movie. It's a TV series that addresses fascism. Go watch Andor, then watch Jessie's video about it, and come back in 3 minutes after our break.
Yeah, if there's an endorsement to make, it is watch everything Jessie Gender has ever made.
We stand
Love you,
Jessie.
Jessie.
Jeez. Yes. I hope you're listening to this, Jessie. I love you.
Here's R2D2.
Aw, so cute.
It's so trans.
Tell us about this feller.
I love it.
So this R2D2 was lovingly made by Emily of the Transverse as a commissioned piece that I think she paints them themselves, right? Like
Yeah, she
buys
does
the
it.
R2D2.
She does it on stream sometimes even.
Yeah, on stream. So
Mhm.
I have one.
Yeah.
And apparently if you take this to like Disneyland and you go to the right area, it'll like interact Bluetooth
Oh,
wise
that's
with like
cool.
the things around it. And it's like cool that way, but I've never done that. So I'll
Mm.
have to try that at some point.
Yeah, no,
Um,
Emily's very cool, and everyone should go follow the transverse. Yeah, she showed me her R2D2 or her astromech. I don't know. It's not maybe it's not R2D2. It's a different astromech. I don't know. But yeah, when I was on the show, she showed me that. So yeah, everyone go follow transverse.
You can
and then
also more specifically follow the shop on Etsy. It's called Droid Outpost.
okay.
I don't know if commissions are open right now, but there's some pictures of past droids, and it's just a total delight. They're so
That's
fun.
cool. I do have another R2D2 as well.
Ooh.
And it is it's the Lego one.
Ah.
Big old thing. So yeah, I like R2D2. It's the character in Star Wars that I relate to the most. And um as a kid, I thought I was a robot. Like I felt like
Mm.
my thoughts and the way that I presented myself, I felt so out of place from humans that I actually thought I was a robot internally. Like if you would have x-rayed my bones, you'd find metal bones. I don't know how I was born, but I'm a robot, and I kind of just like related to that a lot, actually.
Yeah. It's extremely relatable because for the longest time I thought I was an alien.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Beeps
Like
and boots.
I legit had a recurring fantasy where like aliens would like land on Earth and they would like beam into me my true memories and they would take me home to my real parents on another planet.
Yeah. I'd
Now,
fantasize like, oh, when the aliens come, I'm totally going with them, not just like hanging
oh
out. Like,
yes,
hey,
I'm
aliens.
to this
Yeah.
day I'm still like get me off this planet.
We have an additional content warning for this section regarding dangerous ocean situations. Everybody lives, but it is scary.
Now you have a special story that you like to tell. I have heard a shortened version of the story, and it is absolutely wild. Can you please, for our audience, tell us the boat story?
Oh, wow. The boat story. All right. Well, okay. This is true. All of it is true. Okay. So I got this job doing seafloor mapping. And I got the job because I was out of a job. In fact, it was living in that apartment in Bellingham that it was like I put on the skirt and I am like wearing it around the place. Shortly after that happened, the .com crash happened, right? This was when was this? 2001. So it was around February through April of 2001, I was out of a job. Because the .com crash happened. Like I was working for a startup and it just one day got a pink slip. Everyone is laid off. The whole company gone. I didn't know what to do. I had a resume in my hand and I went to Seattle and I'm like going around and trying to get a job and no one would hire me because there was 10,000 other engineers lined around the block with resumes in their hand, like a stack. Like they printed like 50 resumes, going in and trying to get, 100 jobs that were offered that day. And so I went to an agency that would place me into a job and said, get me any job that I'm qualified for. So this survey company, this boat survey company, reached out to me. It's like, we want a systems administrator to go out on these boats and set up equipment and run the network while we're doing a survey. And when survey's done, you box all the equipment back up and ship it home, and then we fly you back home. And the perk of this job is you get to go anywhere in the world that we are doing surveys, and that could be anywhere. So get your passport, and I was single at the time. I'm like, well, this is adventure. So I took the job as a system administrator. And the first job I did was going from Singapore to Perth, Australia, on a boat. This isn't the boat sinking part. That's my second tour. But the first one, I basically learned how to be on a boat and do my job and live there for 2 months on the water, on the ocean. And I didn't get seasick, and it was all great. And I got to see like all these countries I never got to see before. And it was like super great, cool. Like, I learned a lot about the world. I I learned things I would have never learned had I not taken it. Uh, so the second time they wanted to send me out, I landed in Mumbai, India, and there was a boat already there that had come into port, and it had experienced some issues, like running into someone's fishing net or something, and they had to like bring it into dry dock and cut the fishing nets off of it. This boat was called the MV Ocean Voyager. And this boat is significant because it was involved in the first time someone had gone and tried to find the Titanic. In fact, there was a National Geographic special that was created where it involved that boat and another one and then these boats had like ROV robot units on them. They found the Titanic. They found exactly where it was at the bottom. They had these big lights that they lowered into the water and dropped it all the way down to the Titanic's like deck, and put these lights on and turned them on so that we could all see like what it looked like under there, because it's pitch black. It's like super deep down there in the North Atlantic. So the Ocean Voyager, this boat, was involved in all of this, and it had like a room full of computers, and the special had like this computer room and a deck and all of its equipment on it. And now here it is. It's in Mumbai, India. It's been, repurposed and rebought and sold, and now it is our vessel that we are going to use to do underwater cable survey or pipeline survey or something like that. I think it was a pipeline at this point between Iran and India. And yeah, it was an American company working for the Italians who was working for the British, and blah, blah, blah. We were kind of like sort of separated by many orders of magnitude, but I don't think we were technically supposed to be there as Americans. But we were. And the company, the survey company is actually based out of like Netherlands or something like that. So, they probably had some sort of a cover. Anyway, so I went to Mumbai, India. This is the first time I've ever been to India. And got to experience India. And it's basically exactly like Slumdog Millionaire, if you've never seen that movie. It is just as rich and tragic as one would imagine, of seeing how people lived every day. And the place where the boats were docked were right next to not the rich part of town. It was where all the houseless people lived in makeshift buildings made out of essentially junk. And that was their life. That was their thing. And I spent 2 weeks in India because we were waiting on permits to go out and survey because we needed to get them from the Indian government. And eventually we just had to get them somehow. Once we obtained those permits, we set out and, from Mumbai and went out to go survey. And we surveyed, with our boat and another boat called the Micklin Searcher. So it's Ocean Voyager and Micklin Searcher, 2 boats. We needed 2 boats to be able to go do the survey because the water was so deep. And we had a special kind of cable on board. And the cable was it was this stainless steel wrapped fiber optic cable that was 10 kilometers long on a giant winch spool on the back. And attached to that cable is this device called a towfish. And it's a custom made fiberglass capsule. If you remember Star Trek 2, the torpedo tube, just imagine that torpedo tube kind of like a little bit deeper, like kind of thicker this way, but kind of the same. And that cable attaches to that. We and slow it into the water, and it's neutrally buoyant. And the boat, as it drags that thing behind it on the cable, it can go down to the bottom of the ocean. And it could go down to the bottom of the ocean, and it can fly above the bottom of the ocean at whatever depth we want it to. So this is how we can get fine resolution at a very deep part of the ocean, right? The boats have on them what's called a USBL transponder, and it's at the end of a pole that is down into the water. So there's like this device that is, with a cord that runs up this pole. Both boats have them, and they put their transponders in that. From those transponders, it can ping down to the towfish, and the towfish will record, where those pings came from and what the signal strength was. And then that signal gets fed back up the fiber optic, and using like differential GPS and like all sorts of weird, cool things, we can know exactly where that towfish is at the bottom of the ocean so that we can make a proper map of it. And all of this is important, like foreshadowing. So these 2 boats, we're going out and we're surveying the bottom, and it's really deep down there. The first crisis that hit was in the middle of the night. We were winching in and out the towfish, and somehow the winch malfunctioned and snapped the cable in half. But luckily for us, we still had a hold of the other end so that the towfish didn't get lost or anything. But it did mean that we had to take the cable that was on the winch and spool it into the boat by hand. And so I was told, hey, go help people spool this cable in to the boat by hand. Okay, it's 5 kilometers of cable, so we spooled that by hand into the middle of the boat and into the winch. We grabbed the other end of the cable that was held, hooked it back up to the winch, pulled the towfish in out of the water, and then had to spool that 5 kilometers of cable into the boat. So now the boat has 10 kilometers of broken cable spooled into itself. We had to go to port to go get another cable that was whole because we can't fix that. So we went into Muscat, Oman, the port of Muscat, Oman, so in the Middle East. And so we were in port, and to go into port, we have to, that pole with the transponder, we have to winch that up into the boat. And that is, there's a pole that runs to the engine room. So someone went into the engine room and yanked the pole up, right, with a chain. So it's raised. We go into port. We get another 10-kilometer fiber optic cable flown in from the United States overnight. So that must have cost a pretty penny. We get that cable reinstalled back on the boat onto the winch. And, while that's happening, I get to experience the Middle East, and it's really hot. It's like 125 degrees outside, hot. And I was not trans at the time. I was a white boy, a very large white boy. Like I was a lot taller and a lot bigger than everyone there. And I kind of go with the assumption of like, I'm in the Middle East, and I'm such a fish out of water. I am not going to do anything to make anyone mad or think that I'm like some bad American person. I did my best to be like very respectful for everyone there, and I didn't really know how to handle myself in the Middle East. And I'm like, I just don't want to like cause an international incident here. So like I didn't, that was all fine. Mostly what happened is that I mostly got heat, sort of heat exhaustion from being outside too much. And so I'm glad we got the cable installed. We went out back to the point where the cable broke so that we can continue our survey. And this is where everything gets really interesting. So that pole that we had to raise to go into port, well, we had to lower it again. It wouldn't lower on its own, apparently. So to get it unstuck, somebody went with a sledgehammer into the engine room and started to pound on the top of it to try to get it unwedged. But there was slack in the chain. They didn't like pull the chain tight and then try to whack on it. They wanted it to kind of like loosen, right? Well, they smacked the top of it a bunch, and it got unwedged. But the pull is so heavy that it just like unwedged at such a rate that when it started to go down, the chain didn't have enough strength and it snapped. That pole then went straight through the boat. It left a 12-inch hole in the bottom of the boat, and then water started to come in through the bottom of the boat. While this was happening, I was sitting at my computer doing what I do, my day job of making sure all the computer systems were running and functioning correctly. And then I hear the abandoned ship whistle. And I'm like, that's not good. So I go to the muster point that everyone's supposed to go to on the boat. Because we were all, when you get on this boat, the first thing they teach you is like, if you hear this, you come here. You stop what you're doing and you come here. And the captain was there, and everyone was there, and the captain's like, y'all are getting off this boat, and you're going over to that one, and you're getting in this this motorboat that we have. Like we lower this motorboat, that's part of the boat, part of the ship. You lower this motorboat, and you're gonna go 2 by 2 into this motorboat, and we're gonna ship you over to this Michelin searcher boat, and where everyone's getting off this boat because we're abandoning ship because there is a leak in the engine room that we can't fix. Okay. What I had on me is what I had. I couldn't go back. Like I couldn't say like, oh, but let me go get my stuff. No, it's just like you're getting off this boat right now, and and with the captain saying that, it's like, all right, yes, sir, we're doing that. I had my watch on I had a camera in my pocket and my clothes that I was wearing and nothing else. And the captain had my passport because that's what captains do. They have your passport. So I got on the other boat. And then I learned all the details about what happened with the engine room. And what happened was that there's a big hole that got created. There's a plate that's supposed to slide over. That's supposed to, on the porthole, there's like this plate that you can like crank and then like slides over. Well, that got frozen in place by rust and it never got tested to make sure that it could actually do that. So that didn't work. The next step was to close the door to the engine room and seal it, and hopefully the pressure of the door and that would make it stop sinking enough. Well, there was over the years there was enough holes punched through the firewall of the engine room where sealing the door didn't actually seal anything. Then there was the attempt of taking a tarp and putting it over the front of the boat and kind of working it under to see if the tarp could like cover the hole so that and then the tarp would kind of like plug the hole. That didn't work. Then at all of this going on, there was like SOS, please, over the radio, SOS, SOS. The Americans were in the area with the USS Seattle, a supply ship, and they had like a couple Chinook, like a Chinook helicopter that they launched off that boat. And the Chinook helicopter tried to lower pumps into our boat and try to pump the water out. Like 3 different pumps, and like basically none of them worked. So they abandoned that plan, and then they told the captain, yeah, this boat's sinking and you can't do anything about it. So get off this boat, go to the other one, stay a half kilometer away and watch it sink. So it's at this point that there was like some items that were, some people try to go back over there before, it was too late, before the whole thing sank. They tried to pull whatever they could off of the boat. The tow fish that was there, they just basically cut the straps off, that was holding them to the deck. They're neutrally buoyant. So when that boat sinks, they're just gonna, stay floating. All the computer equipment's going to sink. Everything that my job was about, everything that was in my cabin was going to sink. And someone managed to save a picture out of the galley of the Titanic and brought that over to the Micklin searcher, because that's important, I suppose. And we spent 5 hours watching this boat sink. And I had a camera in my pocket, so I took pictures of it sinking. And whenever it kind of got interesting, just take another photo. And I have like a whole, I still have them. I have like 40 photos of this boat in every stage of it sinking. And one of those photos actually ended up in the Omani Observer, article in the local Oman newspaper about this boat sinking. So yeah, I was like photographer of the day, apparently. And we just watched this boat sink, and like in the middle of the night, the crew member, some of our American crew members found the picture of the Titanic and chucked it overboard as a bad omen to have this picture of the Titanic rescued from a sinking boat on our boat that could also sink in shark infested water. Like, they weren't taking a chance. Like, nope, this thing's drowning with a boat. And so they chucked it right overboard. So we went back to Oman on the Micklin searcher, sunburnt and with dirty clothes. And I had to go to a department store and find the largest clothes they sell and wear that because I was a big person. And the captain had our passport, and I called, I tried to get on sat phone and try to call home like, hey, parent, dad, mom, whomever, I'm coming home early because my boat sank. That was the same night my mom left my father. So happens. So whenever I called home on the sat phone, I got, Mom, your mom left me. She took a gun, and just my dad freaking out that my mom's gone. And I'm like, okay, well, my boat sank, so please come get me, at the airport, right? Come get me. I'm home early. And I basically just sat there on the rescue boat processing the fact that my parents just broke out and my boat sank in the ocean. And wow, that's something. It was a very it was a moment where I'm just like, well, I guess I'm a grown up now. Like, is multi levels of F-numbness, let's just say.
Your dad did eventually get his gun back after
Yeah.
your mom successfully moved out and everyone wasn't angry and emotionally agitated anymore.
Right.
Have you ever been on a boat since that happened? Would you go on a boat again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I have no fear.
Of course.
I don't have
What
a
are the
fear.
odds? What are the odds that that two boats that you're on sink?
Yeah, what are the odds? In fact, they would joke around at my work, before I even got onto this like tour. They would joke like, no boats ever sank. When's that ever happen? It just so happens on my,
wild.
going out. It did. So, yeah, I've been to the Middle East. Probably the only time in my life I'm gonna ever be able to go. I mean, seriously.
Yeah. I mean, I know what you're referring to. As a Middle Eastern person myself, it's there's certain parts of the world that are not safe for me to go to because of who I am.
Yeah.
That is unfortunate, but thank you so much for sharing that story with us. It's absolutely wild. I got a very abridged version of that story before, but
Yeah, that was the 25-minute version.
yeah, so getting to hear the whole thing is just, I mean, I like to joke that like wild things are constantly happening to me all the time, but I definitely cannot top that story. And yeah, that's quite the rite of passage to adulthood.
Weren't you
Yeah.
around 27 when that happened?
Yeah, I think so.
That was your Saturn
Yeah.
return, that story.
Yeah.
Whee!
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have 3 questions left that are part of our regular show ending. Is there anything that we missed today about authenticity that you want to make sure that you say?
I would say like go inside, go into yourself. That's where you need to look. Don't worry about anyone else. Worry about yourself. If you need to find some therapist that helps you with that, there's different techniques. But that's where the real healing starts. Is reparenting yourself and really asking the questions and doing a 5 whys analysis. That's something from software engineering. Ask yourself why, and then from that answer, ask yourself why, and keep going down, and you eventually get to the root. And then from the things you've realized from those whys, figure out how to mitigate or counter what you found, how to correct it. And it's usually just do work on yourself. If you've got trauma, and pretty much every trans person I've ever met has some form of it, that's incumbent upon you as a person to figure yourself out. It's not everyone else's job. So, and authenticity follows from that.
Often in today's discourse, we unfortunately have to define ourselves by our trauma and our pain. But as I like to tell all our guests, it's far more important that we define ourselves with our joy in what makes being trans so wonderful. Can you share an experience with us that you've had with gender euphoria?
Yes, I've had many of them. But my favorite is when you and I were in that living room
Yes, I know where
doing
this is going.
doing like we just went to Value Village and we bought a bunch of stuff and we're like, let's go try it on. And so we came home and we did like a fashion show. Like I basically did the whole trans emptying the closet thing. Like I went through my closet and like, okay, these are pieces that I think I could let go of because they're going to a good home. I let Miranda try on a bunch of stuff, and whatever Miranda wanted to keep, she kept.
Yeah,
Um, and also we tried on the stuff that we bought at Valley Village, and we kept the things that fit and made us look flattering. And we had the whole mirror, and just had a really good time with it. And it was like, wow, this is really what it. This is really where it is. This is really the
yeah.
joy. Like I was like beaming. I had really good energy. It's so
You
good.
had such a smile on your face that whole time. It was so wonderful to see it. And I very much
Yeah.
appreciate so for the I mean, I came home with a very full suitcase.
Nice. And
she,
So
I've
she
seen the
saw
piece.
you
I've
wearing
seen
one
you
of the
wear 'em.
shirts on stream,
I'm like, oh,
and she was like, "Oh,
yes, yes. I mean, I didn't plan it. That was just the next shirt I had on the in the pile. So
right.
but yeah, no, I'm very grateful that I got to have that like, trans elder experience because, you literally are my trans elder.
Oh,
Like
wow. Really?
I don't really have trans people in my life, like in person. Like it's just the two of you that I know that I get to hang out
No.
with. So yeah, that was a really good experience for me, getting to try on all these sorts of different clothes. And I mean, you went full like photo shoot mode. You're like, yeah, girl, work
she
it,
did."
work it, work it.
So, yeah, I did.
So I have a bunch of pictures. I have a whole like Google album of all my photos from my trip to Seattle, and many of those photos were from that little fashion show that we did. And yeah, it was fun because like I mean we were just changing in the living room, and we were kind of comfortable
Yeah.
being in a state of somewhat undress around each other. Um and
Yeah.
yeah, like, and I talk about this all the time, like the power of clothing, and you get so much euphoria out of wearing clothes that make you happy. So I
Yeah.
thank you from the bottom of my heart for, just letting me share that experience and handing me down all your old clothes that I will be wearing to the office when I go in next week.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I I got to experience that in a different way too, where whenever I was getting rid of my old masculine clothes, I found a trans man to give them all to. And I got
Hmm.
to experience how he liked wearing all of that stuff. And that was super cool to see.
Hmm.
Um, like, uh, yeah, I mean, if you want to have experience joy in your heart, it's participating in that event in an event like that. Um, it's super cool.
Hmm.
It was even better than makeup to me.
Aw.
Well, I have one final question for us today. Cappy, what would you like to make sure that folks know about your perspective on gender and non-binary, trans, or gender diverse issues? You had your little soapbox and you got to say one thing. What would you want to make sure that you share with folks?
Uh, you know who you are. You know yourself better than anyone does. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Uh, they you got to ask yourself the question, why are they saying this to me? You'll usually find the answer to be it's because of something that they're going through. And it has nothing to do with you at all, which frees you to be authentic and living your best life as a human being. You didn't even have to, you don't have to be trans every day. You can just be a human being doing what human beings do, like everybody's supposed to feel. Like you're supposed to embody yourself. You've only got this experience. You've got this one life. Live it. Don't let fear win. And don't let fascism bring you down. Fight back against it. It's worth it. And gather people close to you that make you feel good. The others need to work on themselves before they can enter that circle. And if you want more nuggets of information, wisdoms, join the Discord. Ask me DMs.
Or
I
ping
could
her
be here
name
all day.
in a community channel. She does better with reading it if you actually tag her directly.
Yeah, you'll have to tag me or I'll never see it. I've got so many other things to look at. Yeah.
She's busy with, having a day job and parenting and having analog time and whatever.
Analog time is important to me.
Yeah.
I'm Gen X. Like, I need analog time.
You need to just like hold the cat and look at a book for a while.
Yeah. Sit on the deck, drink.
Cleo's got to cuddle someone, and you're her favorite person in the whole world.
Yeah.
Cleopatra is our youngest cat, for those who don't know.
Cleopatra's like sitting right here on the bed.
I know.
I miss my little Cleo.
I know. She's so cute.
Cleo and I bonded. She was all over me. I don't know.
We recently had an emote of Cleo made for our most recent fundraising event on Gender Federation. And it's the wiggle emote. It's Cleo wiggling her butt at everyone because she's a little hecker, gets into mischief constantly and jumps on things. That's her preparing to jump and get into stuff. Well, Chad is sharing all the love, races. This has been wonderful. Lovely to see you. I know there are people in the UK who are staying up to catch the end of this stream, even though it's a work night. So, folks, TransCapybara, also known as Cappy for short, is my actual real life wife. She's not only a lovely woman, but also a software engineer, a parent, and all around fantastic person. You can find her occasionally joining in on streaming shenanigans or handing me food from off camera. You can also connect with her in Meowster's Cloud or Discord server. That's discord.gg/Meowster. There is an airlock that you will go through when you join the server. You just have to open a ticket and answer 3 questions. That's so that the low effort trolls don't get in.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I have to try to troll. Nah, I'll move on. It's just one of the ways we keep our community safe. So yeah, if you mention that you heard about it on the show, I mean, by now you're almost 3 hours in probably to this episode. So if you heard about it on the show, you can say that, and that will probably get you in faster. Yeah. Would you like to share about next week's Clouder query or this week's query, Miranda?
So here's this week's Clouder query that you, our audience, can answer on our social media platforms. Go ahead, Cappy.
Am I supposed to be doing it?
Yeah. Yeah. You're the one who wrote the query, so you get to ask your question. This is the question you want everyone else to answer on socials.
Oh, I see. Okay. What steps have you taken to become a more authentic person?
Love it. So, folks, our next guest is going to be 2 weeks from the live recording because we have every 4th Monday we take off to catch up on editing or reschedule a guest if something goes wrong one of the weeks. So in 2 weeks from now in the live recording, we'll be having Larissa Frost on. And we're going to be discussing plurality and creativity, which is very exciting. So if you, there's a couple of wonderful community members that joined from a plurality stream many moons ago. So if you want to learn more about plurality or be in the chat with other plural folks, it would be a great episode to catch. And as far as community updates, if we did it right, by the time this is published, the edited version, it should be the new intro and the new outro. It's me and Miranda talking instead of me and Atlas talking. So I hope you enjoy the new intro and outro. The live stream, it's still the old one because we're still editing it while it's live. But I hope you all are enjoying the new things. Now that we've hit episode 100, I think we're going to stop counting because it's really hard. It causes chaos in the back end and we have to reschedule someone because, life happens and then we have to go fix the numbers on everything everywhere and update graphics and it's a nightmare. So we're going to stop counting now that we hit 100. You can count in your hearts if you want. Miranda, would you like to thank our Patreon supporters this week?
Absolutely. So Jennifer would like to thank all of our supporters on Patreon. We have Holly Blash, Winter Vespers, Loch Ness Gamer, Justin Baker Rojas, Sandra Mickelborg, Yasio, Ray of Swords, Sherry Keller, Mirami, The Hessian, and of course, TransCapybara.
So helpful, so supportive. Well, everyone, as we like to say, trans rights are human rights. That's right.
Ribs.
Genderful would like to thank our guest for being on this podcast. If you'd like to catch us live, join us on Mondays on twitch.tv/GenderMeowster. Show notes will appear in the edited versions of the show on Fridays on both YouTube and podcasting platforms.
If you have a question you'd like the host to answer or are gender diverse and would like to request an interview, please send an email to genderfulpodcast@gmail.com or sign up via the website at genderfulpodcast.com.
As a gender diverse community, the Clouder wants to assure our listeners that we're prepared to moderate our spaces. We will get positive and negative feedback on these shows and topics, and we have a moderation team on our channels, socials, and Discord server ready to deal with this.
Please join our Discord server at discord.gg/Meowster to meet the community and get a regular digest of solidarity resources. You can also support us with subscriptions on Patreon, following and reviewing us on your favorite podcasting platform, or engaging with our posts and content on social media at GenderfulPod and at GenderMeowster.
You can take a few minutes to rate the show. We will post any 5-star reviews on our socials, so get creative. Mention a special interest of your own, a project you're working on, or even say hi to your comfort person in your review. What power!
This show is made possible by volunteers, tips, and subscriptions. Shout out to the folks helping us coordinate guests, edit the podcast, moderate the live chat, and post on our socials.
Here's our artist credit. Genderful is hosted by Miranda Katita and GenderMeowster. Genderful's pre-show is wrangled by JuiceTex. Genderful's live stream is produced by Mirami. Genderful is edited and mixed by TransGriffin and FreeRangeMegs. Genderful's promos and thumbnail graphic are designed by TransGriffin. Genderful's social media is managed by Kainsey. Genderful's theme song is called Hope by FreeRangeMegs, also known as Soma. The current GenderMeowster logo was designed by Siptopia. Genderful is the intellectual property of GenderMeowster. All rights reserved. Trans rights are human rights. That's right.